Greek mythology, a friendly guide to ancient stories. A hook into the past. Imagine sitting around a campfire with friends, swapping stories late into the night. Someone tells a tale about a hero who wrestled a lion, another about a goddess who turned jealous rivals into stone. You lean in, not because you expect these stories to be true, but because they feel alive, full of drama, lessons, and wonder. That's exactly how Greek mythology worked for the ancient Greeks. Their Netflix, their bedtime stories, their way of making sense of the messy human world. Why this matters? Greek myths aren't dusty relics. They're the DNA of Western storytelling. Every time you watch a superhero movie, read a fantasy novel, or even laugh at a sitcom about complicated families, you're brushing against echoes of Zeus, Athena, or Hercules. These myths gave shape to ideas of love, power, jealousy, and fate, themes we still wrestle with today. The gods as characters, not just deities. Think of the Olympian gods less like distant religious figures and more like a dysfunctional family drama. Zeus, the king of the gods, was powerful but prone to affairs. Hera, his wife, was fiercely protective but often vengeful. Poseidon ruled the seas with a temper as stormy as his waves. They weren't perfect, and that's the point. The Greeks imagined their gods as exaggerated versions of themselves, flawed but fascinating. Analogy: if life is a workplace, Zeus is the boss who can't resist meddling, Athena is the brilliant strategist who always has a plan, and Dionysus is the colleague who insists on throwing wild parties. Heroes, mirrors of human struggle. Greek heroes weren't superheroes in the modern sense. They were mortals with extraordinary gifts and equally extraordinary flaws. Achilles was unbeatable in battle, but undone by pride. Odysseus was clever enough to outwit monsters, but struggled to get home because of his own hubris. These stories weren't about perfection. They were about resilience, choices, and consequences. The word myth comes from the Greek mythos, meaning story or speech. Mount Olympus was imagined as the gods' home, but the Greeks never thought of it as a literal palace in the clouds, more like a symbolic penthouse for divine drama. Myths were often retold differently depending on the region. There wasn't one official version. Myth: the Greeks believed every myth as literal truth. Reality: myths were flexible. They were teaching tools, entertainment, and cultural glue. People didn't necessarily believe Zeus was hurling thunderbolts at them, but the image captured the awe of storms. When reading a myth, don't ask, "Did this really happen?" Instead, ask, "What does this story say about human nature?" That shift makes mythology feel less like homework and more like a mirror. Everyday connections. Family drama? Think of the Olympians. Workplace rivalries? Athena versus Poseidon over who gets to be patron of Athens. Road trips gone wrong? Odysseus' Odyssey is basically the ultimate travel misadventure. Greek mythology is less about gods and monsters, more about us, our fears, our ambitions, our messy relationships.